All right, so this is the Age of the Enlightenment. We are in a special time in human history that relates actually to the formation of our own country. Please ignore if you hear the dog whining. I don't know why the dog is whining. So the Age of Enlightenment is from 1650 to 1800. So it starts in the late Baroque, or actually during the Baroque, and transitions through most of what we call the classical era, the time of Beethoven, Haydn, and Mozart, which lasts roughly from 1750, the death of Bach, to 1820, the beginning of German Romanticism. The Enlightenment was essentially ended by the French Revolution. It's a time when the scientific principles that were used to understand the laws and nature of the universe in the beginning of the Enlightenment become to be used for explaining the natural laws of society and humanity. So they're going to take these logical principles and natural laws of science that they've used for astronomy and gravity and all of these sorts of things. And now they're going to use it to apply that there must be natural laws to society and humanity, and they must be logical, and we must apply them, and we must question all of society and humanity to make sure they're following what should be natural laws. So the Enlightenment's going to tackle social issues using logic and reason. So they're going to attack the social norms. They're going to attack the wealth division between the peasants and the aristocracy in the church. They're going to tackle equality of sexes. They're going to tackle the equality of humans, i.e. tackling the idea of slavery being highly illogical. They're going to use the Enlightenment ideas and scientific principles and logic to understand how the legal system should operate. And they're going to attack the notion of the absolute monarchy, which sort of led all over the Baroque, which was the idea of the divine rights of kings and the illogicalness of that idea. And they're going to attack the absolute monarchs of Europe, since absolute monarchy is essentially pretty illogical. The philosophical side was rooted in France. The French you know how it is. The French philosophes, which is a French word for philosophers, looked to discover the natural laws of society in the same way that science began to decipher the natural laws of the universe. People such as Montesquieu looks for the separation of power by essentially creating the notion of an executive, a legislative, and a judicial branch of government. This should sound familiar. Jean-Jacques Rousseau creates the notion of a social contract between the government and the citizens. The idea that the government must abide by what John Locke said were the ideas of society that the humanity is born having, the idea of life, liberty, and property. That should also sound pretty familiar. Rousseau said that this was a contract, this idea that John Locke had with the government, and that if the government did not protect life, liberty, and property of its citizens, then the citizens would be able to overthrow that government or take over the government because the government was in breach of their contract. Should sound familiar. Right? And Voltaire wrote and aspired for the separation of church and state, to keep religious freedom for everyone. So to take the absolute monarchs and to keep them from forcing their religion onto everyone in their kingdom, Voltaire said that it was best to have the state and religion separate. Okay, so all these things should sound familiar because these are French ideas, and the French form of government is a republic, and America is a republic. And America is a direct result of the Enlightenment, and it occurs during the time of Beethoven and Mozart. Okay? And so here in America, the Enlightenment ideas lead to the Declaration of Independence, our Bill of Rights, the notion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, our legal system. Right? All men are created equal. And we tackled the same issues. We were slower to get rid of slavery. We were slower to address gender equality, if we ever have, and probably haven't. But you get the idea. We're a newer country. But we come from these French philosophical ideas of the Age of the Enlightenment. Okay. One quick other little Enlightenment philosophy here on this short little video for that Prelude to the Enlightenment section is that Denis Diderot, Diderot, was another person who was looking into these Enlightenment ideas, but not for government. He wasn't really political in his ideas. What he wanted was to collect human knowledge, these Enlightenment thoughts, and share them with the world to make it more equal, to have people have greater access to knowledge. So he created this wonderful thing called the encyclopedia. And of course, the encyclopedia was meant in multiple volumes to map out human knowledge and to disseminate it. If you could afford the encyclopedias and you could buy the volumes, you had access to all of human knowledge. It was the internet. It was the Google, except it was all peer-reviewed, right? It was, nobody was just making stuff up and putting videos up, kind of like me here. So that's your quick introduction to the Enlightenment.